Africa still needs to industrialize. Africa still needs to do certain things, get certain things in order. What do you think people miss in this conversation?
You and I, like ordinary people on the streets, we have to start thinking about migrating within Africa before we start thinking about going to America and going to Europe. The DRC issued a Eurobond. They raised billions of dollars. In fact, that Eurobond was oversubscribed more than 4 times. Yeah? What does that tell you? It's not about the money. The money is there. It's about the mindset. Aid was never supposed to be a lifetime intervention. It was supposed to be a short-term intervention that was catalytic, and it was supposed to graduate countries so that they eventually didn't need aid.
We didn't pay attention. It means we did not prepare for this moment. And it's a rude awakening for the African continent. I mean, there were countries that were left without an entire health data for a population when USAID came to an end.
Welcome to Sustainably Speaking Africa, a podcast about reshaping narratives around sustainability and climate action in Africa. This podcast is brought to you by the Kenya Climate Innovation Centre and is made at Semabox. Join us for this and other episodes as we talk to industry leaders, frontline communities, and the innovators who are accelerating the progress towards a greener, sustainable future.
Thank you very much, and welcome to this particular episode of the Sustainably Speaking Africa podcast. Today, on the sidelines of Africa Exchange, where we are talking money, markets, and mindsets, we sit down with one of the foremost voices on reshaping narratives on Africa, the Executive Director for African No Filter, Moky Makura. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, we're having this conversation on the sidelines of Africa Exchange, and we're having this conversation at a time when there's very drastic changes in how the world works, if you can call it that. Multilateralism, international cooperation. In this particular context where we find ourselves in, what must Africa build for itself now as old development assumptions diminish and new possibilities emerge?
You know what I find interesting? I find people say, like, what's happening now, the US has stopped aid, COVID happened. We look at crises to force us to do what we know we should be doing. This moment in time has actually been happening for a long time. We just didn't pay attention. Now, I always say the universe, if it wants you to do something, it'll tap you. If you don't pay attention, it'll nudge you. If you don't pay attention, it'll slap you. USAID was a slap for us. It was an absolute wake-up call for something we knew we should be doing. Aid was never supposed to be a lifetime intervention. It was supposed to be a short-term intervention that was catalytic, and it was supposed to graduate countries so that they eventually didn't need aid. Very few countries have graduated. Most African countries have become dependent. And we know that aid has been around for 60 years, right? All these development actors, after 2 years, 3 years, if a program doesn't work, they can it, they stop it. Why have they let a program go on for 60 years when they know it's not working? It's on us. It's on us as Africans who have been receiving the funding and not actually fix the infrastructure or come up with the plans to get ourselves self-sufficient. So, excuse me when you say this moment in time, I'm like,
It's been there all along.
It's been there all along. Yeah. We just didn't pay attention.
Wow. So what must we do now? We didn't pay attention. It means we did not prepare for this moment. And it's a rude awakening for the African continent. I mean, there were countries that were left without an entire health data for a population when USAID came to an end. What does it call on all the actors to do now, whether it's governments, whether it's the private sector? What is it that we need to do going forward?
I also want to challenge you on something you've said about, that all of a sudden, we're having to do things. I think the reality is that our leaders were not paying attention, but we as Africans actually were. Because the thing is that we have had to make do. We've had to get up, pull our socks up and do something. Otherwise, we'd be waiting because this aid is not working. There are lots of people, individuals, initiatives, policies, places that are doing things. So we're not waiting. I think the perception is that we've been waiting. Now, we must get up and do something. That's not the case. The people who have been waiting are our leaders, right? So they're the ones who are having to quickly, figure things out. Your average person, when you think about health, most people are paying for health out of their own pockets, right? Most people access healthcare out of their own pockets, even if it's just a small buy medicine here and there. So it's not as if we've been all lying back, kicking back, relying. There have been people who have been reliant on, antiretroviral drugs. I mean, South Africa, Kenya.
Yeah.
And that is something that needs to, somebody needs to buy that stuff. But actually, we shouldn't be buying that stuff. We should have been making it. AIDS didn't come yesterday. AIDS has been around for a long time. So I'm just saying, but there are people, there are a handful of organizations, companies, that, pharmaceutical companies have been thinking about this for a long time. So again, we need to be really careful about the picture we paint, that at this moment in time, Africa has just woken up. No, certain people have just woken up. Some of us have been awake long since, and we've been doing. The thing is that nobody's spotlighting that progress. Nobody's showing that these people are doing stuff. And everybody seems to talk a lot about scale. Like, we need to scale, we need to make things big. You know what I say? How do you eat an elephant? One mouthful at a time. Each individual SMME person that's doing their own little bit, each person that's building, investing, growing, is doing something, and it'll ladder up to scale. We just need to support those young people and the individuals, the small organizations, the small businesses. And that's how you achieve scale. We don't start with scale up here and think somehow it's going to filter down. It starts at the bottom. So there's a lot of things that I think we need to reassess how we talk about them, because don't forget, we are the biggest beneficiaries, let me say that, beneficiaries of this negative, stereotypical perception that we as Africans can't do anything. We believe that. A lot of us believe that. So we have to get out of that mindset. That's that mindset change that this whole conference is about, money markets mindset. It should be mindsets, money markets. Because let me tell you, today or yesterday, the DRC issued a Eurobond. They raised billions of dollars. In fact, that Eurobond was oversubscribed more than 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah? What does that tell you? It's not about the money. The money is there. It's about the mindset, right? People now believe that, because DRC has critical, rare minerals, that's where we need to be. Forget everything else that's not working. So I'm just saying that once people understand what it is that needs to be done, and it's clear, they're going to DRC because they believe that if that country works, we will all have, the transformation we need in climate, right? Because all of those things that are sitting in the DRC are necessary for us to have, climate change.
Yeah.
So anyway, long stories, but the point is that we need to start thinking, talking differently about the continent.
Yeah, you've mentioned how significant mindset is, and you're at the forefront of this in terms of ensuring that information reaches the right people, whether through media, whether through narratives and all that. And, your leadership at Africa No Filter, first of all, just to hear your perspective of the experience so far, and why you particularly keen on Africa No Filter. You're not trying to just say everything is rosy, everything is okay, but trying to have that kind of balanced narratives, balanced perspectives, both challenges and opportunities.
I think it's really important that to let people know that we are not a PR company for Africa. We're not. We're not trying to pretend that everything is rosy, nothing works, because that does such a disservice to the people who are actually suffering. There are people who genuinely don't have food. There are people who are not doing well. There's a cost of living crisis in a lot of countries. It's tough. It's very hard for a lot of people. So to make out that everything is perfect, we just lose credibility. But what we can talk about is progress. What we can talk about is the fact that 5 years ago or 4 years ago, this was how this was. Today, look at this, right? I was in Ethiopia the other day. I haven't been to Ethiopia probably for about 6-7 years. In that time, oh my God, what a transformation in Addis. It is phenomenal. Let's talk about progress. And let's look at a country that, like I said, 40 years ago, 1 million people died. right? The only image we had of Ethiopia was the fact that there were dying people on the street. Look at it today. And you know why Ethiopia was successful? It had such a clear development plan. They were really clear about what they wanted to achieve, when they wanted to achieve it by, and it didn't matter who was in power. The agricultural system is now self-sustainable. So when I talk about progress, that's what we talk about. Ethiopia still has issues, still has problems, and we're not saying that there are no problems. Nigeria has problems or challenges, but let's focus on what we're doing right, because that is how you learn. That is how you learn. You don't learn from something that's gone wrong. You learn from what somebody's doing that's right. Look at what they've done, and then you replicate it. That's how you scale. So let's focus on what is working.
So focus on the progress.
On the progress, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Now, still on mindset. We've talked about, and we hear people talking about narratives about the African continent, especially perceptions that the outer, people not in the continent have, whether it's in the global north or whichever place it is. But how about how we think about ourselves as Africans? How about how I think about myself as a Kenyan and how I interact with you as a Nigerian or a South African or a Tanzanian? What must we do in having a radical shift in that so that we don't see each other as flags, different flags, and we don't think of my success being at the expense of your progress? What do we need to do internally in the continent?
So, a couple of years ago, there was an AFCON match, the football. And I remember Ghana was playing the Comores. Ghana was slated to win that match, but the Comores won. Do you know, Twitter at the time broke out in rage because the Ghanaians did not know there was a country called Comores, right? It was when they won the football that we realized that what is this country? And the point I'm making is that we as Africans don't even know ourselves. A lot of us we didn't know there was a country in Africa called the Comores.
Yeah.
And the point I'm making is that we cannot, things like the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is not going to work until we know each other. Because why would I be trading with a Kenyan if I don't know anything about Kenya? I know more about America, right? But how do I get to know you, right? It's like having shared interests. It's about me watching your films, watching your content. Why do I trust England? Right? Britain, do you know how it became great? Who put the great in Great Britain? You think it was us? It was them. We have to do it ourselves. So, we have to look at Kenya, as a Nigerian, look at Kenya. That story that came out in the media about your president saying Nigerians don't speak as well as... I'm Nigerian. I speak better than your president. Anyway, you can take that out of the piece. But that's just sidetracking. What was the point of that? We are not going to work unless we are unified on certain things. It is not in the West's interest to have us unified because we are a phenomenal force as a continent over 1 billion people. And that is why I am much more concerned about the narrative internally, because if we turn it around and we believe, I will have 1 billion ambassadors talking about Africa in a positive way. I won't care what the global north or the West think. I won't. I will have 1 billion people who are invested in building, thriving, looking at the continent. And occasionally you meet people like that. And we're trying to grow that base of people who believe in Africa. Because once you have a vision for a place, that's where you're going to invest in schools. You're not going to... Do you know how much money we spend on education outside of our countries? If we brought all that back and built up our systems... we would just be phenomenal. And you know what? We are making steps towards that. So it really is about us as Africans really reshaping and rethinking how we think about our countries, but also getting to know the continent better. And I think this amazing platform, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, I think it's phenomenal. It's the fact that 54, maybe 55 sovereign states have come together. It's a phenomenal achievement. 54 people to agree on one thing, right? Now it's about, making it operational, so that genuinely when you get to a border, you can, but we've made progress. We've made progress and we've got to celebrate that.
And you believe that there's progress in terms of how we see each other, how we perceive each other in the continent, or there's still a huge gap in that?
Look, I don't think it's a huge gap. I think when we're outside of the continent, Africans naturally come together. It doesn't really matter, if I'm in America or whatever, I gravitate towards the Kenyans, whoever else that's African, because I see myself reflected in you. But when it comes to us at home, our leaders have to show the way. Our leaders have to show the way, right? And there are a handful of countries that have come together. Yes, we've got the regional blocks, and that's working, and that's a start. But I think you and I, like ordinary people on the streets, we have to start thinking about migrating within Africa before we start thinking about going to America and going to Europe. We are losing young people, our best brains.
Yeah.
Even though I believe in mobility talent, what they call global mobility talent, people must move around in Africa.
In the continent.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let me pivot this a bit as we bring this to a close on matters climate change. And this is one of the greatest existential crises that we face today. I know from a narrative perspective, it has, for so long, it's been described as, Africa has been described as a victim of a problem that it did not cause. And sometimes the narrative ends there. What do you think is missing in that narrative? And what must be done differently? Even as people talk about, energy transitions, as people talk about low emissions, Africa still needs to industrialize. Africa still needs to do certain things, get certain things in order. What do you think people miss in this conversation, and what must we look at?
I think there are two things. I think one is that this perception that, Africans, in fact, there was a BBC headline that said Africa is sleepwalking into climate disaster or something like that, as if we don't even know, like we needed something to tell us. We do need to highlight the people who are making change.
Yeah.
But I think the language around climate has become one that doesn't sit with us. It's a very, I think, Eurocentric, Western-centric development speak around climate. And the way I see it, because we did some research around it, and what we found was that in Nigeria, for example, the Fulani herdsmen were moving around, and there was it became a security issue, right? Because they were fighting with the local farmers, because they were moving their cattle around. But it was termed a security issue, whereas actually it was a climate issue that was driving them around because they were trying to feed their animals. So you have to understand that a lot of the issues we face on the continent sometimes are actually, the basis of them is climate. But if we come in as climate, we don't immediately recognize that. So it feels like climate is their problem. Whereas actually it is affecting us. And that's one of the things that the way we frame things has to be relevant for us, right? You called it an existential threat. That's the Western concept. It's in Nigeria, it's a threat to the livelihood of farmers. In Kenya, it's a threat to, it means different things. So, if you want somebody to buy into something, make it meaningful for them. Just calling it a climate and assuming that we all know, it doesn't work. And that's what I mean, that we have to stop copying and pasting. We have to look at who we are, what we need. And we talk about African solutions for African problems. Let the solutions for Africa come from us. The way we pitch it, the way we talk about climate, come from where we see it impacting our countries, not this big general climate issue problem that we have.
So contextualizing it to the local...
Completely, because that's how people will understand that it's... In England, it's about recycling and things like that. In Africa, it's different. We don't recycle. The thing will be recycled. Leave something there and watch it recycle itself. We just have different ways of expressing the things. And that's why we have to look at what is relevant and important to us. That's why narrative is, it's about us. It's about how we think, how we feel about our continent, about our issues, and not a global conversation about something that,
Africa No Filter is planning in May. I think it's May 25th.
May 25th, yes, bring it on.
Africa Day. And it's a huge campaign that you have in mind. What is it all about, and what does success look like for you?
Success looks like everybody who knows somebody or who themselves is doing something posts on Africa Day, right? We've got this thing where it's a mark. We call it the mark. It's actually the map of Africa where you can put somewhere because it's a visible indication that you are part of it. There's a manifesto that shows that, I'm part of this because we're building a wave. It's like the Mexican wave. We have to start somewhere. And then when people come, it turns into something, right? But the thing is that with every campaign, it'll start on one day, then everyone loses interest because, we move on. Next 25th, of June, back again. 25th of July, back again. Every 25th of every month for the next 3 years. The more of us are doing it, that we're behaving, they're creating a wave. And it's so simple. Just use the hashtag not waiting so we can track it. Use the mark so people who don't read can see, and this is all visible. They're all part of something, because that is how you flood the internet. That's how you change the algorithm. That's how you amass stories. And it's not just one organization called Africa No Filter trying to do this. It's a low risk ask for everybody. So everybody must go to opportunityafrica.africa. That's the website. Just register there. Just say you're interested, and we will send you the tools. We'll send you the mark. We will send you the manifesto. We will send you everything. You can probably download all the tools, but post about the people, the places, the initiatives, the policies, the things that you see that are moving the continent forward. That is all we are asking.
You say that
opportunityafrica.africa.
Africa. Fantastic. What Africans say or proverb can you think of that captures this moment?
Sorry, say that again.
What African proverb or say do you think captures this moment as we wrap up this conversation?
Until lions learn to write, hunters will tell their stories for them. It's up to us. That's it. It's up to us to do what we need to do. The other thing is, I don't like the phrase African proverbs, because what is an African proverb? It's either a Yoruba or a Swahili proverb or whatever. But yeah,
thank you very much.
We can use it. And thank you guys.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you guys for all your work.